Om Gyan Tiramigasya Gyanjana Salakaya Jakshu Militam Yena Tashmai Shigurima Chinada Pisunichina Tarora Pisaishina Amanina Manadena Kitnita Dahari Anya Brasta Sunyam Gyan Kamayana Vritam Manu Kanya Krishna Nushinam Bhakti Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Grata Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So welcome, God brothers and God sisters from all our respective continents. We're now on day 27 of Kartik Vrat of our Parikarama. We are literally getting so close to Purnim, which is on Sunday. So the crescendo, the zenith of this monumental month, which bestows so much mercy upon all of us, is soon upon us. The rain shower is intensifying. The rain shower of mercy is intensifying. We just have to hold out our arms and and raise our mouths to receive the water. Like, which is the bird? Is it the chatak or the?
Yes.
Chatak bird. Just like a humble chatak bird. So today and tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, we are very fortunate to be able to relish the Katha of our beloved Sripad Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaj directly from Mayapur at the UK time of 12:30 today and tomorrow. He'll take us up to the penultimate day of Kartik, which is on Saturday. So Maharaj will be with us today and tomorrow. So Maharaj, welcome again. We're always excited to hear your Katha, and please please enlighten us. Haribol.
Jai Yashoda Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you. Always an inspiration to be here with you all. Jai. Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Om Ganati Mirandasya Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Dadare Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Taratara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Taratara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And today, in particular, I'm offering countless Dandavat pranams unto our Srila Bhakti Daita Madhav Maharaj, whose Avirbhav appearance date is today, and also millions and millions of times Srila Pravishta Amasto Taratara Shishimad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, whose Tirabhav, disappearance day, it is today. So most auspicious day, it's Ekadashi today here in India anyway. I think it's Ekadashi day for you too today. So, and it's also the beginning of Bhishma Panchaka, the last 5 days of Kartik. So basically, this Bhishma Panchak is an opportunity to intensify. That's really the only instructions we got from Srila Gurudev in a very focused way about the Bhishma Panchaka, that now whatever rounds you have chanted as a brat, you can either crank it up or chant them more attentively or carefully, or whatever brats you performed in any area, you can intensify and increase them, rather than thinking, oh, it's just about over, let me sit back and just cruise through the last 5 days and then it'll be finished. So you could take that kind of attitude, but the Bhishma Panchaka is a very pointed opportunity to not do that. And just want to make it clear I was listening to Ashram Maharaj presenting the description of when Bhishma collapsed on the battlefield finally as a result of Shikandi coming in front of him. We know the Mahabharata story. She's actually Amba from a previous birth, and she took the form of a male. So Bhishma Dev, he knew that, so he wouldn't fight with her. So when she was in front of him, the arrows from Arjuna were allowed to penetrate his body to such a degree where he collapsed. He had his final battle cry, so to speak. And at that point, all of the leaders, Yudhisthira Maharaj, all the Pandavas, Dronacharya, all these personalities, all, of course, acknowledged Bhishma Dev as the greatest warrior that had fought in history. That they had, none of them had seen a greater warrior than Bhishma Dev. And so they all came immediately that evening when he had collapsed. And that was the time, I'm just explaining here the sequence, so all of you can appreciate, because there's 2 meetings with Bhishma Dev. So you have to make it clear and remember this for future. So Yudhisthira Maharaj, Dronacharya, Duryodhan, all these personalities, they all came to Bhishma Dev at that time. And this was the time when Bhishma Dev was requesting a pillow. And we know the pastime that Duryodhan, he ran and got a silk cushion to put behind his back, and Bhishma Dev rejected that. That wasn't in a Kshatriya spirit. So Arjuna stepped forward, and with arrows, he made a beautiful pillow for Bhishma Dev so he could sit his head up and view all the personalities around him. And then he requested some water. And you'll remember that Duryodhan, he again brought a gold jug, filled with beautiful water, etc. And again, Bhishma Dev rejected that. And then Arjuna stepped forward again and put the arrow in the ground where the water came straight into his mouth. So this happened when Bhishma Dev first fell. This wasn't when he was about to die. He doesn't die straight away. So this is the difference that our Bhaktivedanta Ashram Maharaj was saying yesterday, that after this, he was kind of rolling the 2 pastimes into one. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam in the 1st canto, it's very clearly described how at the conclusion of the Mahabharata war, that was approximately 10 or 7 days after Bhishma Dev had fallen. Then the conclusion to the Mahabharata war happens, and then Yudhisthira Maharaj loses all his sons, his children. The Rajkumaris are murdered by Ashwatthama, and then they all go back to Hastinapur, and they perform the funeral rites of all the departed souls for about 14 days. That's how long it takes. And then Krishna, he remained in Hastinapur, consoling the Pandavas for about another 10 days. So it's practically like a month after Bhishma Dev has first fallen. And Bhishma Dev specifically, he's waiting for the sun to come into the northern hemisphere and going to leave a very auspicious time. And which will be at the end of Kartik. It will coincide to these last 5 days. That is a fact when he's going to leave. But it wasn't in the sequence that it didn't happen at the very beginning when he first fell down. It happened about a month or so later, because the second time when Krishna is just about to leave for Hastinapur, this is described, I think, in the 12th chapter of the 1st canto of Bhagavatam. And when he's leaving, he sees how Yudhisthira Maharaj is still inconsolable about all the deaths of all these personalities, and he's thinking that it's his fault. So Krishna, he wants to glorify Bhishma Dev. So he takes Yudhisthira and all the Pandavas and all the leaders from the Kuru dynasty then to have darshan of Bhishma Dev. So this is the second meeting. And it's at this meeting that Bhishma Dev in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto describes to Yudhisthira Maharaj all the teachings that he received from Janu Maharaj, his grandfather. This is his grandfather, gave him so many teachings. And the grandfather, Janu Maharaj, if you remember the pastime when Ganga Devi is descending, Janu Maharaj swallows Ganga Devi, and then he cuts her out in his thigh. So Ganga Devi is like his daughter in one sense. So Bhishma Dev, who is the daughter of Ganga Devi, and her father, so to speak, is Janu Maharaj. So Janu Maharaj instructed directly Bhishma Dev on all these very incredibly esoteric, beautiful topics of leadership, of Varnashram, of social order, and so on. And this is all described in one whole section of the Mahabharata, and very wonderful teachings that Bhishma Dev gives at that time, because Krishna is inspiring him. Krishna is standing right in front of Bhishma Dev at that time. And very interesting to consider what is the bhav of Bhishma Dev, because it's described in the in my Gurudev's Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, in the 5th verse. There's a whole long description there of how Bhishma Dev on the battlefield was seeing Krishna covered in the dust of the horse's hooves, but he was thinking that this was Krishna in Vrindavan covered by the dust of the cows. And he was seeing that the bruises that his arrows were making on his body were looking like love bites of a enthusiastic lover. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Gurudev is quoting Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this. So Bhishma Dev's final destination is interesting because he is a Gyani Bhakta in the sense that he knows the Aishwarya of the Lord. So, but also he's aware of Krishna's Madhurya. So where does he take his next birth is interesting. It's saying in some places he goes to Vaikuntha, but Vaikuntha can also include Dwarka, of course, and Ayodhya can be in that realm, but far more Madhurya. So at this time, when Yudhisthira, Maharaj, and the Pandavas have received all this instruction, then they all leave. And then it's 5 days when Bhishma Dev is alone. And he's meditating, he's become completely internal, he's surrounded by rishis and sages. And then there's 5 days, and then he leaves. So this is when the Bhishma Panchaka actually is, when he's, so Ashram Maharaj is correct that it's the last 5 days of Bhishma's life, but in a different sequence. We have to get understand the sequence there. So this is the Bhishma Panchaka. And the idea of powerful Bhishma Dev, this is the idea to give us a powerful, intense boost for the last 5 days of Kartik. So if you want to follow, a particular diet or whatever like that, my Gurudev never spoke about that particularly. That didn't seem his focus at all. He just encouraged us to intensify our focus on Radha and Krishna's pastimes and intensify our focus on the speciality and gravity of being able to perform the whole Kartik Parikarama under his guidance. So this was more his mood, that he wanted us to just sit with the whole thing. And actually it's the end of Chaturmasya, of course. It's the end of 5 months this time, because we had the month of Purushottam in the middle there. So it's a culmination. It's a huge, huge thing, really, the last 5 days. And we start with Ekadashi. We start today with Ekadashi, which is always special, being able to perform this brat of Ekadashi. And there's always so much kripa to be experienced by the devotees when they're performing nicely their Ekadashi brat. And if we remember, of course, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, who was such a renounced personality, in conjunction with all that I've just said. So these 5 days, Ekadashi, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, they kind of make a very special mix, we can say, for our contemplation and meditation, bringing us in to the end of our Kartik Parikarama on the Purnima, which will be here on Monday is the Purnima. And we break all our brats on the Monday here in India, in Navadvip. I don't know what you will do in India, in England. maybe it's Sunday. Sunday is Purnima there. Okay, so that's only 4 days left for you then.
It's actually a double Purnima. Sunday and Monday is both Purnima.
Oh, really? There's also an eclipse on this Purnima. There's 2 eclipses coming up in the month of December, which can be auspicious or inauspicious, depends how you approach them, which is also interesting. But there's a whole like crescendo, as Yashoda Prabhu was just describing. That's basically, I mean, the whole 4-5 months of Chaturmasya, our Kartik Brat, our Parikarama, everything is crescendoing. Simultaneously, our Damodarastakam explanations and Brat are also crescendoing. So if you don't mind, I'd like to continue with descriptions of this, because I've explained on the audios the different personalities today, glorified Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj, and Bhaktivedanta Tapasvi Maharaj has glorified Bhakti Dvaita Madhav Maharaj very, very beautifully. So I would like just to drop back again.
Maharaj, before you go into Damodarastakam, can I just ask you a couple of questions about Bhishma? Because it would be a bit strange to ask at the end, because we would have kind of...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just so I can visualize everything, I understood how Arjuna provided the arrows so he could sit back. That made sense. How does the water? I couldn't quite understand how the water, it bounces and the arrow into his mouth. I couldn't visualize the water bit.
He shoots an arrow into the ground that hits a water table under the ground that sprouts up a stream, which mystically, miraculously drops straight into the mouth of Bhishma Dev. It's like one of those things in the airports, you know, when you squeeze it in the fountain, the water comes out. It's exactly like that.
Is that a one-off, or does it continue with the stream?
He just has to turn his head away, and then the water will just keep running the whole time. And when he wants water, he just has to turn his head to it.
Amazing. Okay, got it. And then,
so he has running water till he leaves his body. But this, the principal thing to remember, Yashoda, this happened a month before his departure.
Yeah.
So I was confused about this just a month ago. I was trying to figure out because there's because Duryodhan is there when this first pastime takes place. But at the end, when Bhishma Dev in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavatam, 1st canto, he's speaking, Duryodhan is not there. He's been killed already.
Right.
The war has already concluded, and all the offerings to the departed souls has already been done.
Right.
So Bhishma Dev, of course, being a Mahabhagavat, had a choice of when to leave his body. He had the benediction that he could leave his body whenever he chose to. So he was maintaining the life airs within his body. And Krishna benedicted him with a completely peaceful mind and consciousness, not feeling any pain or any discomfort whatsoever on that miraculous bed of arrows. Very.
So can you clarify for the he was there? So he disappeared 1 month after the original injuries, right?
I'd say about five weeks.
Okay, so the last 5 days he's on his own, and then that.
Well, he's not actually on his own. Yudhisthira Maharaj has left, but he's surrounded by rishis and sages because they've all acknowledged what a great personality this is, and they want to be there for his final breath. And they are all chanting mantras. They are all surrounding him. It's a great occasion. He's certainly not, like a yogi sitting on his own anywhere. Okay. He's completely surrounded by exceptional personalities. And
then where is he for those 4 weeks between his
He stays on his bed of arrows. He's lying on his bed of arrows with the cushion that Arjuna provided, with the running water that Arjuna provided, and he's there on his bed of arrows, not inconvenienced at all. He's like internalized.
On his own at that point, or with the rishis?
There's rishis with him all the time.
Okay, so what's the difference between the 4 weeks and the 5 days then?
Then he's finished giving his instructions to Yudhisthira. He's emptied himself fully of all the knowledge that Janu Rishi, Janu Muni gave to him, which is what Krishna wanted to squeeze out of him. He wanted all these exceptional teachings from Janu Rishi, who had so many teachings about kingly management, etc., and all social behavior, economic, and all these teachings. He wanted Janu Rishi to have a platform to actually put them into the world. So Bhishma Dev was that spokesman, and he put all these into the world in the ears of Yudhisthira Maharaj.
Right.
But
so
then
that's
when they
what the 4 weeks are about. Okay, got it.
What do you mean that's what the 4 weeks are about?
Yeah, and then the final question is, I've never been clear on this, and what you just said just clarified how I'm not clear on it, is what is Bhishma's Staivav?
Well, I just mentioned that it's described that he's a Vaikuntha Vasi. That could mean a Dwarka Vasi in principle, even though he's from Hastinapur, but he comes in that category. He's, I'm not sure of that. I have to go back to the book and look at that. But he's a Gyani Bhakta, and he sees Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but simultaneously, just like Uddhav, he understands the Madhurya aspect of Uddhav. So where that takes him in his Vastu Siddhi, in his final departure, but I'm pretty sure it's described that he, in the Bhagavatam by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, I think the commentary is saying, maybe Madhubrat in Germany is looking at that now, but I think at the very end, in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think there's a description there, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is saying, I think he says he goes to Vaikuntha. He doesn't, he's like many of the personalities that come with Krishna are demigods, and they go back to Swagaloka at the end of the Mahabharata war. But Bhishma Dev is not of that category. He goes to Vaikuntha. He's a higher category than going to Swaga. That's as much as I know today, Yashoda. But tomorrow you can ask me and I might know a bit more.
Yeah, because the love bites that you read about in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary in Gurudev's Gita, actually even in Prabhupada's Gita, it's there as well. It's amazing, but it's slightly confusing from the Swarup point of view.
He is definitely a Gyani Bhakta because he sees Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So being a Gyani Bhakta, just like Lakshmi Dev, it kind of restricts her from coming into the heart of Braj. You can't be a Brijabasi if you have that impression. It's like when Uddhav went to, in the 46th chapter, went to Vrindavan, and he saw Krishna provided a spurti, and he saw everything as when Krishna is on the planet. And then Krishna steps out of a door, and Uddhav, what does he do? He offers obeisances, and then everything changes, because you don't offer obeisances in Braj. That's not the mood.
Yeah,
that's an Aishwarya mood. So it's a very wonderful appreciation of the distinction between Aishwarya and Madhurya. They are so utterly different at the end of the day. So Bhishma Dev, he's one of the 12 Mahajans, like Yamaraj, Shukadev Goswami, etc. So many descriptions of Bhishma Dev. So that's enough on Bhishma Dev.
Okay. Thank you, Raj.
So you're welcome. So coming now into this verse 6, Namo Devo Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabodhuka Jalabdi Magnam Kripadristi Vrisyati Dinam Batanu Grihaneshamam Agyam Edyaksha Drishya. And the translation, O Deva, O you who have a divine form, that's what Deva means, O you who have a divine form, I offer my respectful obeisances to you. O you who are Bhakta Vatsal, affectionate to your devotees. Sri Damodar, O Ananta, Lord of inconceivable magnificent potencies, O all-pervasive Vishnu, O Prabhu, my master, be pleased with me. I am drowning in an ocean of incessant worldly miseries, and I am extremely miserable, and I do not know what to do. O Isha, supremely independent controller, please deliver me by the nectarian shower of your merciful glance and enliven me by becoming directly visible to my eyes. So we have to appreciate all of these verses in context with the other verses. Don't make the mistake at any time of just picking out a singular verse. They are all connected, like I said last week, are like on a necklace. So this sixth verse is reaching an extraordinary pitch of intensity and enthusiasm on the part of Satyabrat Rishi. He's initially meditated on Krishna as the Supreme Lord in the first line, and then he's described the Leela to some degree, the remarkable aspect of Krishna being fearfully caught by his mother from behind in the first verse. The second verse is a deeper description of the Leela itself. The third verse is this description of this Ananda Kunde, these pools of bliss that are drowning the residents of Braj in. So this is going into what we call Swarasiki meditation. This is Swarasiki Upasana. This is when we're going up. Mantra Upasana is when we're thinking of a singular lila. Swarasiki is when we think of swa, many leelas all happening simultaneously practically. This is a spontaneous occurrence of the heart. When the heart is packed with these leelas, sometimes in our bhajan it's described by the acharyas that these leelas just flow in a mixed form, so to speak. They're coming one after the other. So that third verse is describing Swarasiki Upasana. And the fourth verse is like described a definition of pratana. It's when he's asking for a benediction. First of all, he's saying, I don't want anything. I don't want moksha. I don't want liberation, etc. I don't even want Navada Bhakti. I don't want Vaidhi Bhakti. The conclusion is that he only wants Raganuga Bhakti, and he wants to see that divine form of Bala Gopal in his heart. That's what he wants to see. So he's making this request in the fourth verse. In the fifth verse, it's intensifying even more. If we think of a musical symphony, we can see the increasing intensity of it. It's crescendoing. It's this enthusiasm that the bhakta longs for in his own personal life and bhajan. If we can capture this essence of this escalating mood, especially today, remarkably enough, we've just about come to the end of our Kartik Brat. We talked about the Bhishma Panchaka, how to increase, everything is increasing. The nature of the dynamic of love itself has to be increasing to be real love. It's not prem, it's not pure love if it's not escalating. Escalating means that from moment to moment, astonishing appreciations are taking place in the heart of the lovers or the heart of the sadhak. He's constantly, if we read the books of Rupa Goswami or Raghunath Das Goswami, we see this dynamic of astonishment constantly. There's that mood. And in our beloved Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, we would also perceive his astonishment also in all kinds of different areas. There would just be a mood of like novelty, we can say, or fresh, ever fresh. So we've reached this fifth verse. Now the sixth verse. Previously, he just wanted to see the beautiful form of Krishna in the fourth verse. Then in the fifth verse, he wanted to see just his face. That intensified in the fifth verse. That was the last verse. Now the sixth verse, he doesn't just want a spurti. He wants to see it for real. He wants to see it in front of his eyes. This is what he's saying at the very end of this. He says, by becoming directly visible to my eyes. So this is quite extraordinary. Now we're coming out of a meditative conception, so to speak, and we're coming into something very powerful, very rich here. He wants to see Krishna directly. It's almost like leaving the material body entirely. We call it the Siddha Deha, is our spiritually conceived of body that we can, or Siddha Swarup, we can conceive this body in our meditation, but Vastu Siddhi is when we leave this body behind completely. So he's almost crying out like that. It's such an intensity of longing, this mood of this 6th verse, but always see these verses in context of the previous ones, and also in context of the next 2 that are about to come. The 7th and 8th also influence our understanding of this verse. So now with this increased intensity, he decides, he understands in his heart, how did the gopis in their most intense separation attract Krishna? It was by their Sankirtan. It was by their Gopi Geet. When they had found Srimati Radhika and witnessed the extraordinary height of her separation from Krishna, and they had established fully in their hearts that yes, Sri Radhika is the queen of the Rasastali. This is what the whole arrangement was to produce. This is why everything happened the way it did in the first instance in the Ras Leela, because there are so many different groups of gopis, politics, Chandravali, etc., and the Tatashta and the Surit Paksha gopis, the different camps. They hadn't all acknowledged the absolute supremacy of Radhika. So this whole pastime was arranged for this. And once they had discovered Radha and witnessed the extraordinary extent of her mood of Vipralamba, that they thought they were in high separation moods. But when they saw Radhika, everyone is manifesting from Radhika. They are all her Kaya Vyuha. They're all manifesting from her body. So she is the queen of the Ras. So that has to be established. So once that was established, then how to attract Krishna? Then they go to a very clean, sandy place, Gurudev has described. And then they begin their most beautiful Gopi Geet, this song of separation, intense separation to call Krishna. But this is described as the first Sankirtan. This is the original Sankirtan, when they're calling out Krishna in so many different ways with such heartfelt intensity. And Krishna appears at the end of their Sankirtan offering, at the end of their Gopi Geet. So Satyabrat Muni, he's following this example and he's engaging in direct Sankirtan. He's calling out Damodar. He's calling out Ananta, Prabhu, Isha, Vishnu. He's calling out all these names of Krishna to invoke not just a spurti. He's already had a spurti. That's described. He's already had and experienced a spurti. He wants to see more than a spurti. He wants to see Krishna directly. And there's a whole interesting dialogue in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita when Gop Kumar, he goes to Tapaloka and he's with the 4 Kumaras, etc. And they're saying to him, why do you want to go and see Krishna? Just meditate and Krishna will come in your heart. Krishna's in the heart of everyone. Just meditate on Krishna internally and that will satisfy you totally, fully. But Gop Kumar is not satisfied with that. He wants to go beyond that. He goes beyond Tapaloka. He next goes to Satyaloka, to Lord Brahma's place, and then he goes higher. He goes into Vaikuntha, etc., because he wants to see Krishna directly. Do we have this kind of greed? Have we absorbed from this astakam, this mood, to sufficient degree to ourselves be hungry sufficiently for this? Srila Gurudev, he explains this in this commentary. He says, why is it that we feel cheated in this rasa and cheated of all the exalted moods, even after we have obtained sadhu sangha? So we've had sadhu sangha, we've chanted Nam, we've done parikrama, we perform so many aspects of bhakti. We've been under the guidance of a Rasik, Bhavuka, Vaishnava, Tattvavit Vaishnava. And Gurudev is saying the reason is that we do not really want to taste what the saints long for us to relish. So what do we make of that? In other words, what is the extent of our particular greed or enthusiasm? This greed is the principal dynamic of Rag Marg. Fear is the dynamic of Vaidhi Bhakti. And in contrast to that, greed, this greed, what's that? Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati, Kriyatam Tarti Labite, Tatra Lolyam Api Mulyam Ekalam. This lolyam, this greed, this enthusiasm is what the Bhakta, through our month of Kartik, through our chanting all of these verses, through our continued meditation and calling out, this is our heartfelt but greed for what? Is our greed still for wanting to be happy in this material world? The nature of the living entity is by his constitution is being happy. If we're not happy, then we are trying to be happy in every way conceivable. We try to be happy materially if we're not being fulfilled spiritually. It's automatic. We are by nature enjoyers. We have to enjoy one way or another. So if we've managed to purify our lower state of consciousness and only have great faith in this higher goal that our beloved Guru Vargya is laying out for us on a plate, yes, you can have this. You can have this. Just follow these these ingredients. Follow this line. Follow this step-by-step process, given, of course, originally by Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, and coming all the way down very, very clearly, and being unfolded, unpacked, so to speak, by each of the predecessor acharyas. They're making it more clear and more clear and more clear. So it's more and more easily accessible. We have to pray for this constant creeper. But what is the degree of our prayer? Are we enthusiastically enough crying out? One person was once describing how a child, when he just cries a little bit, meh, meh, the mother doesn't come. And then a little bit more, etc., until the child is really screaming his whole lungs out, then the mother will come. So this is the stage that Satyabrat Muni has reached here. It's almost like he's ready to jump off a cliff. Yashoda, you have to mute up. It's almost like he's ready to jump off a cliff, because he is so intent on his achieving his goal. And so beautifully, it's described by Srila Gurudev, the nature of our mantras, etc. So I just want to read a little bit from Gurudev's description. It's on page 123 in the Damodarastakam book, and it's describing in a nutshell what has happened previously in the Astakam and where we've arrived. So it's more or less reiterating what I've said, but in Gurudev's words, so we can appreciate them more. In the fourth verse, Sri Satyabrat Muni refuses to accept the results of performing Vaidhi Bhakti. But in this verse, he expresses that he desires to attain the result of Raganuga Bhakti, Braja Prem. He desires nothing else. It's this point. It's not having any other desire cluttering up the vision or the heart. Those in the line of Sriman Mahaprabhu, and especially those who aspire for the type of prem conceived by Sri Rupa Goswami, Raganuga Bhakti, must have this same kind of determination. This determination of the Bhakta is exactly like that of the Chataka bird. The only water the Chataka bird accepts is the rainwater that falls when the Swati Nakshatra constellation is prominent in the night sky. The Chataka bird thinks, I do not care if I die of thirst. I do not even care if I am struck by a thunderbolt. I will only drink the water falling from the Swati Nakshatra. The devotee should think, I only want deep love for Sri Radha Krishna. I do not want anything else. I especially yearn to become the maidservant of Sri Radha. May I serve her under the guidance of her intimate friends, her pran sakas, her priyanam sakas, and may I serve her beloved Sri Krishna under her direction. I only want this. I do not want any other benediction. So in order to come to this place of desire, one must obviously be educated and versed in these teachings sufficiently. And the degree of our education, again, will depend on our intensity of purpose. How much have we been able to increase through our regulated practice, through our Vaidhi sadhan bhajan, just through our chanting our mantras, through our attendance of Mangalati, through our attendance of different festivals, etc., through our attendance of Kartik Brat, etc. How much have I been able to do this? So, dropping back a little bit, there's a place here in this verse where Satyabrat Muni is referencing that he is drowning in an ocean of incessant worldly miseries. So this is very interesting here. In this verse, Satyabrat Muni, he puts himself as being the object. Previously, it was just Krishna, Krishna, Balagopal, Balagopal, Balagopal. Now he's talking about I. In this verse, he says 3 times, I am drowning. I do not know what to do. I am extremely miserable. He's putting the focus on himself here. He wants Krishna to hear his prayer. His intensity has arisen this much. He's putting himself here. But what is the nature of this misery that he's expressing? The acharyas give different opinions and different options, so to speak. The misery of conditioned life. But this is not really the mood of Satyabrat Muni from the very beginning of this Astakam. It's not like in the Shikshastakam of Mahaprabhu, where it's describing, I am just drowning in an ocean of miseries in conditioned life. That's not really the mood of Satyabrat Muni. His misery is because he's not attaining his goal. This is the misery the misery of separation from Krishna. This is his misery. It's not like an indulgent type of selfish misery at all of the conditioned mind. It's like it's a misery that's caused by separation. So this is how the acharyas, this is how Srila Gurudev explains this fundamentally, that I'm miserable because I'm not with you. It's like the separation of the gopis. The gopis in their Gopi Geet, for example. All the Geets, the 5 Geets of the Bhagavatam, they're all expressions of intense separation moods. That's what they're all about. They're not indulging in any sort of self-misery. It's a mood of separation. It's quite different to what the conditioned soul experiences in a sort of lamenting type of a mood. So in this verse 6, Srila Gurudev quotes the beautiful verse of Gopi Geet, this Tavakatamrikam Ditam Tapta Jivanam, and he explains the differences here in this, saying that this verse is saying that your words and narrations give us life. But then there's a contradictory explanation to that actually hearing these words is going to make us like beggars, is going to make us completely unhappy, in fact. that we're going to leave our families, we're just going to wander in the forests of Vrindavan, etc. Once we hear these words. So these people who speak these words, they're actually like our enemies. So in their divyan mad, in their bewildered, bemused state, this is in their love-lorn state, this is how they're actually viewing these separation moods. But we should understand, of course, all the way through that this separation mood, they are seeing Krishna within the height of their separation. This is called Mohan Akya Mahabhav or Modan. These two stages of Akya Mahabhav within the Mahabhav stage, we can say. There's the stage of meeting, that's Madanakya Mahabhav, and there's two stages in the stage of separation. And they both lead to the same result. The pinnacle is there in both cases. There's a distinction. A beautiful distinction is described because in the separation mood, they're able to witness Krishna as being the supreme supersoul simultaneously to him being their darling lover of Vrindavan. So this is quite extraordinary to appreciate and to churn and get into. So there's many, many more descriptions in this 6th verse. I practically just scratched the very, very edge of it. If we take the time to actually read through these examples that Srila Gurudev gives us, I think we'll be very much enlivened and benefited tremendously. And of course, all of these teachings, everything comes under the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's no question. It's this mercy of Mahaprabhu that we are wanting to attain in this birth, because he is the avatar of this age. He's the Yuga avatar, just 500 years ago. We are fully tucked in to his servants and maidservants from Rupa Goswami on down. So it's always our bhajan, our focus is on his mercy, how to get Satchinandan Gaura Hari's mercy through this teachings of Satyabrat Muni. So I'll end there if there's any 10 minutes more left.
That's wonderful, Maharaj. We have a few questions. That's very beautiful.
I have a question also. All right. Can I ask a question? Raghunath, are you ready? I want to know what you understand. This Astakam was composed 120.5 million years ago. So Krishna had not appeared on the planet. This Dambanda Lila had not manifested. None of this had come into the... We see this map. If Manjalali is there, she's on call for a special time map. You can bring that map up, Manjalali.
I'm there, let me try.
Just if you get it in a moment, otherwise we'll leave it.
This one?
Let's see. Yes. So you see this map here, all of you? I've sent it before. So you see when Krishna appears on the red line in the center of the yellow, the 14 Manus, that's when Krishna appears. So Satyabrat Muni appeared in the Manvantara prior to that, in the Chakshush Manvantara. That's when Satyabrat Muni appeared, and this Astakam manifested. Of course, this Astakam, as we know, is eternal. And this is how we know it's eternal, because it was even in the ether 120 million years ago. But I'm just curious at how Satyabrat Muni caught it, because we know even Jayadev Goswami in the 12th century wasn't really familiar sufficiently with Parakiya Ras, because it's only Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who brings the conception of Parakiya Ras fully into this world. No respectable sadhak would entertain the idea that Krishna would dance with other men's wives. That was completely not even, not even thought of. So, but does anybody have any?
He must be descending, Maharaj, from the spiritual world. He's not an ascending sadhak. He must be a pure devotee. Who's already.
No, that's not right. Also, I don't think that's right, because at the end of his life, Satyabrat Muni takes birth as the son of the sun god. His name is Shraddha, and from there he takes birth as Manu, Vaivashvatu Manu, the Manu that we have today in this Manvantara is the same Satyabrat Rishi as the person who spoke these verses. It's the same soul that
So
is
maybe
there.
maybe he was around in the previous day of Brahma.
No, you can't have too many maybes there. It's got to be something more.
No,
with
but
a
the
little bit
previous day of Brahma, he was there in the previous day of Brahma.
Well, I don't know. I haven't read that.
Okay.
I haven't.
Oh, you're asking if we have any evidence? Oh, I see. I'm just speculating.
Of course, we can all speculate.
idea.
But what is any evidence for? I'm looking at Raghava or anybody. How do you think it happened? That who else is here? Any scholars here? Because, we have Prakashatma. Prakashatma, he's a first-class scholar, an absolute scholar of Vedanta. Where has he gone? I think he suddenly jumped off.
No, he's there. He's waving at you.
Oh, I can't see him. Okay. Prakashatma Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
How did Satyabrat Muni understand about these pastimes when he was writing them 120 million years ago?
That makes me laugh. 120 million years ago. Wow.
120 million point five.
Yes. Well, that's such a long time.
Yeah, Chakshush Manvantara, yeah.
Anyway,
So?
all these pastimes are manifested in the heart. The time is immaterial. It doesn't really matter.
Absolutely.
It can be manifested in someone's heart at any time.
Yes.
So yeah.
This is the answer. This is the answer. I knew you would have the right answer. Thank you. It's the time factor. The time is eternal, so it's always in the heart, running. Yes, absolutely. I'm completely satisfied with that, Prabhu, personally. That's totally correct. Thank you. You are indeed a Vedanta scholar. You are indeed.
I'm a new student. I'm a new student, Maharaj.
Rubbish.
So we have a few more questions, Maharaj.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a link, by the way, it would seem, between what you were saying in the first part about Bhishma and the second part about greed, because we can use the Bhishma Panchak to stoke that greed for that to go the extra mile.
Yes, very good, Yashoda.
Yeah.
Very good, Yashoda. Very good indeed. It's all about greed. It's all about Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj speaks a lot about this topic of greed, of the necessity to find, where can we find it through sadhu sangha. And this is also what's been spoken about in this verse 6. He's referencing sadhu sangha. This is where we find that pointed enthusiasm, not a speculative enthusiasm. It must be in sadhu sangha. That means according to Shastra.
Can we go to Ruben, please, for a question?
Okay.
Pranams, Maharaj.
Dandavats, Prabhu.
I appreciate you mentioned that there's a Madhurya aspect to Uddhava, and I was always trying to understand what exactly is that, because we see that he wants to become a creeper at the feet of the gopis, and the other side is Krishna's advisor, and he's a Aishvarya, a Gyani Bhakta, as Govinda Maharaj would say.
His Staibhav is Aishwarya, is a Gyani Bhakta. That's his fixed Staibhav. You can't change that. Once you see Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it cannot be altered. Just like Queen Kunti was so much affectionate to Krishna, but she couldn't understand how he was running away in fear from his mother at all. It completely bewildered her. She can't comprehend it because she knows, just like you, what do you know in this world? You know the ground is going to support you. You know the sun is going to come up tomorrow. You know particular aspects, right, that are locked in concrete in your so it's in their concrete, this Staibhav. It can't alter that. Krishna is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But with Uddhav, he has a desire to take the dust of the gopis' feet. So his destination his explicit destination, I can't just tell you that. I mean, but it's certainly distinct. Someone's writing this. Can Yogamaya cover the Ashwari Bhav? No. How can that be? Maybe momentarily, Raghava Prabhu is asking, can Yogamaya cover like we think of Vasudeva and Devaki. When Vasudeva and Devaki, they were for a moment, Yogamaya allowed Krishna to take like a couple of mouthfuls of her milk before Krishna goes across to Braj, so he'll be strong enough for the journey across the Jamuna into Braj. This is how it's described in the Bhagavatam. So Yogamaya in that case was able to allow Devaki to see herself like a mother for a moment. But this was practically the only time, because their staibhav is fixed. It can't change out of that. But where is his destination when he had so much association with all the gopis? But what sort of association did he have with the gopis? They were seeing him always as a messenger from Mathura, a messenger from Krishna. They weren't seeing him for a single moment as being one of them. He was never a Brijabasi. He couldn't make cow dung patties. He couldn't yoke some bullocks to a cart. He couldn't do any of the things that the Gopas would do. He was always like the city boy, so to speak, coming into the rural area. He had these sentiments from Krishna, but just like Lakshmi Devi, she's still sitting in Belvan, you know, wanting just to perform in the... How can she come across that line? Gurudev describes so many times, not even a mosquito can actually go between Vrindavan and Mathura. When we understand very, very deeply this absolute division between Aishwarya and Madhurya, there is no crossing over. There may be, like Uddhav had a momentary spurti when he first goes in the 46th chapter is described, that he sees Vrindavan all as it was when Krishna was present. So he sees it there for a moment, but then it goes, when he sees Krishna, as I just described, he offers his obeisances. He's even telling Nanda Maharaj, Nanda Baba, that after Nanda Baba's expressing all these heartfelt sentiments for Krishna being his son, he says to Nanda Baba directly, actually, you know, Krishna's not really your son. He's everybody's father. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You know, what does Nanda Baba think with that? So you see, he doesn't change. He doesn't change, even though he has all this influence. It's like Haridas Thakur, for example. He had Rupa Goswami's influence. He had Sanatan Goswami's influence at the Siddha Bakul. Still, his nature, his fixed place is different. I mean, he's got Prahlad and Lord Brahma within him, but he's not seeing with the same vision. All of these personalities, Prabhu, it's very intriguing the deeper we get into it. The other day, or yesterday, day before, I went to the place of Abhiram Thakur here in Navadvip, and he's Sridham in Krishna Lila, and he has no mother and father that are recorded. And there's a story of how he manifests here. It's interesting. I don't think we have so much time to tell it, but he's on the altar. If Manjalali like to get that picture up, he's on the altar with Krishna. So what sort of relationship does Sridham have, you know, with Krishna? He's not worshipping Krishna. Krishna's his friend, his dearmost friend. You see, if you open this picture up, there are three large personalities. There's Balaram over on the left, and then in the center there's Gopinath, without Radha, by the way. It's just Gopinath. And then on the right is who? It's Abhiram Thakur. And they've all got peacock feathers on. Abhiram Thakur can defeat Krishna in wrestling. Who does Krishna think he is? Sridham can, you know, beat him. He can probably beat him in running also. So he's never the Supreme Personality of Godhead to Sridham. So what's the problem with Sridham standing on the same altar with him? Can you understand?
Yeah.
It's too much for us to
I
understand.
can't really comprehend all these things.
Yeah, right. We can't,
we
but
had-
we can appreciate it from, we can begin to appreciate. Sridham and Krishna and Balaram are like one in a sense. Sridham is the brother of Sri Radhika. Balaram loves Sridham with all his soul, completely. And Sridham feels the same way towards Balaram. Anyway, there's a whole discussion on that. But he's on the altar there. So I'm just saying about the moods of these personalities. You're asking about the mood of Uddhav.
Yeah.
So what, you just said it's incomprehensible. Yes, the mood of Uddhav is also incomprehensible. Yeah, that's the answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We've gone over time, but if you could answer this one very quickly, I think it's worth clearing up. Taruni, your Gita question.
Oh, about Bhishma Dev.
Yeah, I just had a technical, thank you. I just had a technical question because I was a little confused about the timeline. Because in the calendar, we usually observe the appearance day of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in December time. And Bhagavad Gita was spoken just before the start of the war. So I was of the understanding, and I think a devotee told me a long time ago as well, that Bhishma Dev was on the bed of arrows for nearly a year. But you're saying maybe 5 weeks. So I was just a bit confused about that. I'm not so familiar.
Tarani, I wasn't there at the time, and I'm just taking my praman from Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you look there in the 12th chapter of the first canto, when Krishna goes to Hastinapur, and he takes, the 9th chapter is when Bhishma Dev explains to Yudhisthira all these things. And Krishna is just about to set off for Hastinapur at that time, but he doesn't go. He goes with Yudhisthira to the battlefield. So that's the sequence that's described there. So Bhishma Dev has fallen. Now, if you look at the sequence, Krishna doesn't spend a year consoling Yudhisthira in Hastinapur. He goes back with the Pandavas after everything's been wiped out, and it's described in great detail how Maharaj Yudhisthira performs all the funeral rites for all those people that departed in the battle of Kurukshetra war. In India, today, as well as then, it's a 14-day ritual that they go through, the offering of oblations, etc., for the departed souls. It's 14 days. So Yudhisthira and all his family members, they performed these Shraddha ceremony for 14 days. And then Krishna stays for another 14 days afterwards. This is how it's described in the Bhagavatam. And then he departs for Hastinapur. But on the way, he takes, so it doesn't look like a year to me at all. Taruni.
Okay, Maharaj.
How long is the actual battle for?
18 days.
18 days. Confusing.
Not really. You can unthread it. All the time frames are there. It's intriguing to actually get into it and see in relationship to the first canto also. Yes, I got a map actually. I've got a map already.
Okay.
I'm waiting for a
Maharaj,
to do it.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So tomorrow we're finishing Damodarastakam.
We might. We've got 7 and 8. We've got 2 verses. We might leave you on a cliffhanger.
Oh, we can always come back next week post Kartik. No problem. Okay, do you want to introduce our singer for today, Maharaj?
Kirtaniya.
Yeah, Bhajan.
Kirtan, yes.
Kirtan,
Bhajan, yes. Chandrasekhar Prabhu, where are you? You're there somewhere. Yes, there you are, Chandraji. Are you ready, Chandra?
No Kirtan is here, just a parrot.
Okay, that'll do. That'll do, Prabhu. Go for it.
Namamisharam Satchidananda Rupa लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले भ्राजमानम् Jashodabiyo lokhalat tavamanam Puramrishtamatyan tato druta gopya Rudantamuhu netra yugmam rijantam Kuram bhoja jogmena satanka netra Muhushasyakampa Tirekhanka kantha Stita graivam da modaram bhakti batham namamisharam Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundala Gokule Bhrajamana Iti driksalilabhir ananda kunde Svagosham nimajjantam akyapayantam Tadiyeshitagyashu bhaktairjitatam Punah prematastam Setavriti vande Namamishvaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Varandeva moksham namokshavadhingva na chanyam vrineham varishatapiha idam te vapurnatha gopala balam Sada me manasya vairastang kimandyai Nama mishva
Satchidananda
Satchidananda
Rupam
Rupam Lasat Kundala Gokule Brajamanam Idam te mukham bhojam avyuktanilai vritam kuntalai snidgha raktaischa gopya muhuschumbitam bimba raktadharame Manasya virastam alam lakshalabhai namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundala Gokule Brajamanam Namo Deva Damo Dharananta Vishnu Prasida Prabho Dukha Jalabdi Magnam Kripa Drishti Vristyati Dinam Bhatano Grihani Shama Magyam Edhyakshi Drishthyai Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Kuveratmajo Badhamurtyaiva Yadvat Taya Mochito Bhakti Bhajo Krito Cha तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामे प्रयच्छ न मोक्षग्रहो मेस्ति दामोदरेह नममीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् नमस्ते स्तुदाम्ने स्फुरतीति धाम्ने त्वदीयोदराय विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमो राधिकाय त्वदीया प्रियाय नमो नन्तलीलाय देवाय तोभ्यं नमो राधिकाय तदीया प्रियाय नमो राधिकाय तदीया प्रियाय नमो राधिकाय तदीया प्रियाय नमो राधिकाय तदीया प्रियाय नमो नन्तलीलाय देवाय तोभ्यं राधा दामोदर 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 जय राधा दामोदर राधा दामोदर राधे जय राधा दामोदर राधा दामोदर राधे
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.